So you're ready to sell your business. It's a huge moment, the payoff for years of blood, sweat, and tears. But then you hit a snag. The buyer's offer, it just doesn't meet your price. What do? This is where deals get really interesting and really risky. I mean, this is the question, isn't it? You've got your number, they've got theirs, and there's a gap in the middle that looks like the Grand Canyon. But that gap doesn't have to kill the deal. In fact, there are a couple of standard tools in the M&A playbook designed specifically to bridge this valuation gap. Let's get into them.
All right, so to close that gap, you're usually looking at two options, earnouts and seller notes. Now, both of these mean you're not getting all your cash up front. But, and this is the crucial part, they represent two totally different kinds of bets on the future. Let's break this down because it's everything. With an earnout, you're making a bet on the business's future success. It's a performance gamble. With a seller note, you're betting on the buyer's ability to actually pay you back. It's a credit gamble. Performance versus credit. Let's dive into that first one, the performance gamble. You know, on paper, earnouts can look pretty good, like a win-win. But for you, the seller, it can honestly be a minefield. The second you hand over those keys, you give up control. And that's exactly where the trouble can start. And here's the scary part. In the words of M&A advisor Vinil Ramchandran, a lot of these earnouts are tied to profits, right? Something called EBITDA. Well, the new buyer can actually play games with the numbers. They can ramp up expenses, delay revenue, basically make the profits look lower while they owe you money, only to let them soar right after the earnout period ends. Here's a perfect, real-world example of how that works. Imagine you just launched an amazing new product, so you bake an earnout into the deal based on its sales. But the new owner, they just starve it. They cut the marketing budget to nothing, keeping sales flat until your earnout period is over. Then, boom, they flip the switch, launch a huge campaign, and all those profits you were counting on, they go straight into their pocket, not yours.
And look, this isn't just some bad dream. This happens. The data shows that a full 26% of all deals with an earnout end up in a legal battle. That's more than 1 out of every 4 deals landing in court.
And even if you manage to stay out of court, your odds of getting paid what you're owed are not great. Studies show that a jaw-dropping 30 to 50% of earnouts pay the seller absolutely nothing. Zero. Your chance of getting that extra money is, at best, a coin toss.
So you might be thinking, why on earth would anyone agree to this? Well, in some industries, you don't have a choice. Take life sciences, for example. The future is so uncertain with things like drug approvals that over 80% of deals have an earnout. It's just the cost of doing business, accepting huge risk for the chance at a huge reward. Okay, so if earnouts are a dangerous bet on performance, what's the other option? That brings us to seller notes. And here, the game changes completely. The risk isn't about how the business does. It all comes down to one simple question. Can the buyer actually pay their debt?
A seller note is pretty easy to understand. You're basically acting as the bank. You loan the buyer part of the money they need to buy your company, and they promise to pay you back in installments with interest. It's predictable. It feels safer, right? Well, not so fast. Being the bank has its own set of hidden traps.
So first, you have the obvious risk. If the buyer goes belly up, you're probably not seeing your money. But the really sneaky one is something called subordination. Think of it like this. If the business starts sinking, there's a line for the lifeboats. The big bank that funded most of the deal, they're first in line. You, the seller holding the note, you're way at the back. The bank gets paid first, and you only get what's left, if anything. Oh, and sometimes you might have to wait for a long, long time. Some loans require your note to be on full standby, meaning you might not see a single dime for up to 10 years.
So you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, a performance risk with an earnout or a credit risk with a seller note. Neither is perfect. So how in the world do you choose? Let's try to make it a little clearer with a simple decision tree.
So, first question, and be honest with yourself. How do you feel about losing control? Because after you sell, someone else is driving your car. Are you okay with them determining whether or not you get that final big payout? If you can truly let go and say, okay, I trust them to run it, then maybe an earnout is still in play. You're betting on the new owner. But if the thought of your financial future being in someone else's hands makes your stomach churn, then a seller note with its predictable payments is probably the way to go. It takes performance right out of the equation.
All right, question number 2. This one's all about the buyer. Just how solid are they?
Do you really trust their finances? Are we talking about a massive cash-rich company or someone who's stretching every penny to make this deal happen?
If your trust in the buyer is rock solid, a seller note feels a lot safer. You believe they'll make good on their promise to pay. But if you have even a little bit of doubt about their financial health, an earnout might actually be better, because at least then your payout is tied to real results the business generates, not just a piece of paper that says they owe you money.
You see, it is a genuinely tough choice, and there is no single right answer. It's a maze of what-ifs, which kind of begs the question, is there a way to avoid this maze altogether? Well, there is. After we've gone through this whole minefield of deferred payments, let's talk about what the pros, the people who do these deals for a living, say is the absolute best strategy. This quote says it all, doesn't it? No seller is ever excited about waiting for their money. An earnout or a seller note is always a compromise. It's never, ever the goal. The best advice is also the simplest. Get paid. All of it, up front. Because the only way to truly 100% eliminate the risk of not getting paid later is to get paid now. Any dollar that isn't in your bank account on closing day is a dollar at risk. Period. And that really is the golden rule. This should be your number one priority in any negotiation. You fight for every last dollar of cash at closing. You only even begin to talk about things like earnouts or seller notes when it's the absolute last resort to save the deal. So before you sign on that dotted line, here's your checklist. 1. Push relentlessly for maximum cash up front. 2. Treat earnouts and seller notes as tools of last resort. And 3, and this is non-negotiable, talk to your M&A lawyers and tax advisors. The tax hit from these different structures can be wildly different, and you do not want any nasty surprises. And that really leaves us with the one question that matters most. You've poured your life into building this company. You've created real value. So when you finally walk away, how much of that hard-earned value are you really willing to leave on the table, betting that you'll get it back someday?